Picture the African savanna in the late 1970s. The earth is just baked so thoroughly by this unrelenting sun that the mud cracks into these jagged puzzle pieces.
Yeah, totally bone dry.
Exactly. The watering holes are basically just empty dust bowls. And in a landscape like this, the polite rules of nature documentaries just completely vanish.
The whole established biological contract shatters.
Right. The contract where predators hunt and prey flee. Today, we are looking at a scenario where the prey, driven by this bizarre cocktail of evolutionary desperation, they just stop running.
They turn around and challenge the apex predators for control of the food chain. It is a total systemic collapse of normal ecological behavior.
It really is, and we're dissecting one of the most violent and honestly mysterious interspecies conflicts on record.
The multi-year war between the lions and the baboons of Tsavo, Kenya.
Yes. And for this deep dive, we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources. We have historical accounts compiled by the YouTube channel Apex Truth, which covers events like the Battle of 95 Baboons versus 15 Lions and the infamous 7-day slaughter.
Such intense names for these events.
I know, right? We're also examining excerpts from a written text called War of the 92, the Tsavo Vendetta.
And for you listening, we really need to frame these sources carefully right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because when you analyze events that happened decades ago in the remote bush, historical fact often blends with local legend.
You definitely see varying numbers across the accounts.
Exactly. Like one source cites 95 baboons, another claims 92, and some even describe this massive horde of 150.
And the lion pride ranges in the telling from like 8 to 17 members.
Right, but our mission today is not auditing the headcount. We are here to extract the underlying science. We want to understand the extreme physiological and tactical adaptations that happen when two distinct species are just pushed to the brink of starvation.
So, to understand how a primate that is normally focused on foraging transforms into an actual combatant, we have to look at the environmental trigger.
Because a baboon doesn't just wake up and decide to fight a lion.
No, not at all. So, what was the catalyst here?
Well, the catalyst was this brutal extended drought cycle hitting the Tsavo Plains in southeastern Kenya during the mid to late 1970s.
And this wasn't just a dry spell.
No, the major rivers, the Galana and the Voi, they dried to a literal trickle. And when water vanishes, the ecology experiences this massive domino effect.
Right, because the massive grazing herds, your zebras, your wildebeests, they rely on constant hydration and fresh grass.
Exactly, so they migrated far out of the region to survive.
Which leaves the lions completely stranded.
Yeah, a pride of lions can't just follow the herds indefinitely. They are highly territorial animals.
Plus, the metabolic cost for a 400-pound predator to constantly travel is just way too high.
So they were trapped in this ochre wasteland with an empty pantry. And this introduces a severe caloric deficit.
They're starving.
They are starving. And when a predator starves, its brain chemistry actually changes.
Really? How so?
Well, the lack of nutrients suppresses the amygdala.
Okay, that's the part of the brain responsible for risk aversion, right?
You got it. Under normal circumstances, lions basically ignore baboons.
Because baboons are agile, they escape into the canopy, and honestly, their sharp canines can inflict nasty wounds.
Exactly. The energy expended hunting them rarely equals the caloric reward for a lion. But a starving brain totally rewires its risk assessment.
It's just desperate for anything.
Right. So the lions began targeting vulnerable baboons, picking off stragglers, and even raiding their nurseries.
And that right there, the lions crossing that line and taking infants, that is what triggers the shift.
It changes everything.
Because we see baboons flee from leopards all the time on nature shows. Why didn't the baboons just migrate away like the grazing herds did?
That's a great question.
I mean, what makes this specific primate retaliate with such extreme violence? They started raiding the lion dens at night, dragging fragile lion cubs away and killing them?
It's shocking.
That isn't just self-defense. That is a targeted, vindictive response. It reminds me of human history, like a civilization whose resources dry up, forcing a localized border dispute to erupt into total war.
The parallel is definitely there. To understand why flight turned into fight, we really have to look at primate neurobiology.
Okay, break that down first.
So, baboons possess these incredibly complex social structures, and they're glued together by deep neurochemical bonds.
Right.
When a lion takes a zebra foal, the zebra herd runs. They rely on sheer numbers for species survival. But when a lion takes a baboon infant, it triggers a massive spike in cortisol and oxytocin within the entire baboon troop.
Wait, oxytocin, isn't that the love hormone?
It is often called the love hormone, yeah. But in a high-threat scenario, it acts as a bonding agent for collective defense.
Oh, wow.
It totally overrides the individual flight response. The baboons registered the lions not just as predators, but as an existential threat to their genetic lineage.
So their internal chemistry essentially locks them into this state of wrath.
Exactly.
And the first recorded instance where this boiled over was near the Voi River around 1975 or 1976.
That was the turning point.
Yeah, a lioness attempted to snatch a half-grown baboon, but instead of scattering like 40 to 50 baboons, swarmed her.
Just a tidal wave of primates.
They descended in this unified wave, biting her flanks and hurling rocks until she was forced to abandon the kill and flee.
And that moment rewrote the survival playbook for both species in Tsavo.
It really did.
Once the baboons realized their collective aggression could actually repel a lion, the traditional snatch-and-grab hunting methods of the pride became totally obsolete.
The lions could no longer rely on intimidation.
No, both sides were forced to invent new behaviors to survive this new dynamic.
Which forces a massive societal shift for the baboons, because the sources note that baboons typically live in distinct competing clans.
Right, they spent a lot of time fighting each other for dominance.
But under the pressure of the lions, those rivalries completely evaporated. They merged into what rangers called a megatroop.
A unified horde of anywhere from 90 to 150 individuals.
Led by these heavily scarred alpha males with names like Kibo and Lara.
It highlights this fascinating reality about nature. Complex social hierarchies and clan rivalries are a luxury of abundance.
That makes a lot of sense.
When resources are plentiful, animals have the caloric energy to squabble over status and mating rights. But when extreme scarcity hits, those social rules are immediately deleted.
Survival requires unity.
Exactly. The baboons coalesced into a single superorganism because divided clans would have just been picked off one by one.
That makes me think about how human sociology works. We see the exact same pattern.
Oh, absolutely.
In times of plenty, societies fracture into competing factions. But the moment a massive external threat appears, all those petty grievances are shelved. We unify because the alternative is extinction.
The parallel is very strong. Scarcity forces innovation. And the baboons innovated by utilizing the geography of Tsavo.
They basically turned the landscape into a weapon.
They did. They claimed the rocky ridges and steep cliffs as fortresses, and they established a physical division of labor based entirely on biology.
Right. The heavy, muscular young males formed this frontline barricade on the lower rocks.
Like an infantry line.
Exactly. And the females and juveniles stayed higher up in the crags, utilizing gravity to their advantage. They would drop heavy rocks and thick branches onto any lions attempting to scale the cliffs.
It is a staggering use of kinetic energy. They are neutralizing the lion's size advantage by using the terrain.
But wait, I have to ask, are we anthropomorphizing this? Like, were they actually planning ambushes and defensive infantry lines, or is this just raw instinct manifesting in a weird way?
It's a mix. It's not conscious warfare in the human sense, but it is highly evolved tactical adaptation. The terrain dictated their best chance of survival, and their social bonds allowed them to execute it as a group.
Which means the lions can't just charge up a hill, they have to change how their brains process a hunt.
Yes, they can't rely on brute force or a quick ambush in tall grass anymore. The lions underwent a major cognitive shift.
The accounts talk about this. The sources describe massive, dominant males like Jafar, who is noted for this milky, scarred eye, and highly lethal lionesses like Zara.
They had to abandon the instinctive solitary stalking techniques they were born with.
Because a solitary stalk against a fortified cliff is just suicide.
Exactly. Instead, the pride began moving with coordinated group maneuvers, heavily focused on energy conservation and spatial awareness.
Zara was apparently famous for the whisper charge.
Yeah, moving in complete silence before exploding into an attack.
But the pride as a whole learned to use feints. They would send a couple of lions to charge the front of the baboon defense.
Just as a distraction.
Right, to draw the alpha males out of position, which allowed the rest of the pride to flank the exposed rear.
And flanking requires a level of predatory calculation we usually attribute to pack hunters like wolves, not lions.
It's incredibly strategic.
They also began timing their attacks for the moment of highest vulnerability. You see, a megatroop of 150 baboons consumes a massive amount of food.
So they can't stay on the cliffs forever.
Right. In a drought, they eventually have to spread out across the plains to forage. And the lions learned to wait for this exact dispersal to launch their coordinated strikes.
So the baboons have the numbers and the high ground, while the lions have adapted to coordinated flanking and extreme patience.
It's a complete arms race.
It really is. But eventually a conflict like this transitions from tactical maneuvers to just a grueling test of physiology. The environment becomes a crucible.
This brings us to the period the sources call the 7-day slaughter.
Right. The 7-day slaughter was a week of near constant physical and psychological attrition.
Neither side could secure a decisive advantage, so the battlefield just became this brutal test of endurance.
The psychological aspect is what really stands out to me. The baboons realized they didn't just have to fight the lions, they could actually degrade them.
They weaponized noise.
Yes, the accounts describe the baboons sitting up on the cliff, screaming and howling relentlessly through the night. They intentionally denied the lions the ability to sleep.
It's so calculating.
Think about sleep deprivation as a recognized psychological weapon. I mean, for you listening, think about your own life for a second. If you miss just one night of sleep, your cognitive function plummets.
Oh, totally.
Your reaction time slows, your mood sours, and your immune system dips. So how much does a lack of rest level the playing field when you're fighting a 400-pound apex predator?
It levels it tremendously. The physiological impact on a feline predator is devastating.
Tell me more about that.
Lions are biologically engineered for explosive bursts of fast-twitch muscle energy.
Right.
To maintain that, their physiology requires up to 20 hours of rest a day. Sleep is when their bodies rebuild ATP.
ATP?
Yeah, adenosine triphosphate. It's the molecule that stores and transfers energy in cells. By screaming all night, the baboons physically prevented the lions from synthesizing ATP.
So they are literally draining the lion's cellular batteries.
Exactly. And furthermore, chronic sleep deprivation floods the body with stress hormones. This severely suppresses the lion's immune systems.
And they were already malnourished to begin with.
Right. Now, with their immune response compromised, the bites and lacerations inflicted by the baboons stopped healing. The wounds began to fester.
So even a small injury becomes life-threatening.
A minor scratch from a baboon canine could become a crippling infected ulcer.
There is a specific incident during this week that highlights this. A young lioness who was already suffering from an untreated gash and severe fatigue stumbles during a charge.
The fatigue just dismantles her coordination.
And the baboons immediately capitalize. They swarm her. The male lions manage to drag her out of the fray, but she is severely crippled. She's permanently removed from the pride's hunting force.
The lack of sleep and the starvation just stripped away their physical superiority.
But the baboons were sustaining terrible losses as well, right?
Oh, for sure. The exhaustion affected their judgment, too. Whenever a fatigued baboon slipped from the rocks or misjudged the distance to a tree during foraging, the lions killed them instantly.
It's just non-stop tension. And what makes this entire period so eerie is how the surrounding ecosystem reacted.
They could sense it.
The sources note that the natural harmony of the savanna completely broke down. The giraffes, the remaining antelopes, even the birds, they all fled this specific sector of Tsavo.
They sensed a level of violence that just violated the natural order.
The only animals that remained were the combatants and the scavengers. The vultures, the hyenas, and the marabou storks simply waited on the periphery, watching these mammals tear each other apart.
It became an isolated arena of suffering, and as the drought deepened into its most severe phase, the war of attrition was forced into a geographical bottleneck.
The Aruba Dam.
Yes.
By late 1979 or early 1981, depending on the account, the water levels at the dam had evaporated into just a few muddy pools.
There was the only moisture left for miles.
Which completely changes the tactical reality. The baboons can't stay on their rocky fortresses if they want to drink. They are forced into the open basin.
And the geography dictated a catastrophic collision. Dehydration is a much faster killer than starvation.
So both species, just emaciated and pushed to the absolute limit of physical endurance, converged on those muddy pools.
The accounts describe this final clash at dusk as a chaotic melee of dust, fangs, and debris.
It sounds horrifying. The lions didn't even bother with a whisper charge or a flank this time.
No. Driven by intense thirst and hunger, the entire pride charged the baboon lions head-on.
Just pure desperation.
It was. Zara, the lioness who had perfected those stealth attacks, was struck by a barrage of heavy rocks mid-stride and killed.
And Jafar, the colossal alpha male, was pulled right into the center of the baboon swarm. He was severely mauled and barely survived.
He actually had to be dragged away by the remaining members of the pride.
But the lions did break the baboon defense. They killed several of the alpha defenders who were trying to hold the line, inflicting massive casualties on the troop.
It was a devastating loss of life for both sides.
And yet, after this horrific battle at Aruba Dam, the violence just stops.
Yeah, it just ends.
There is no conquering roar. The baboons don't drive the lions out of Tsavo, and the lions don't wipe out the baboons. It's so strange because in human history, wars usually end with a treaty or a clear conqueror claiming territory.
Right.
But here, they just stopped. Does nature ever actually allow for a winner? Or is it always just a desperate scramble to not be the loser?
Nature rarely affords the concept of a winner in prolonged, unnatural conflicts like this. Winning implies you have secured a sustainable dominance over your environment.
Which neither side did.
Exactly. This war pushed both the felines and the primates to the brink of ecological collapse. They fought themselves to a standstill because neither side could sustain another casualty without risking total genetic wipeout in that region.
They just hit the absolute biological threshold of endurance.
They did. And then, finally, the environment broke the tension.
The monsoon rains returned.
The Galan and Voy rivers swelled, the vegetation rapidly grew back, and the traditional grazing herds migrated back into the Tsavo plains.
The return of water was the return of abundance.
And with abundance, the necessity for this extreme behavior evaporated.
The baboon megatroop, which was really only held together by the external threat of the lions, just fractured.
The neurochemical bonds of collective defense dissolved, and they split back into their smaller, rivalrous clans.
And the decimated lion pride retreated into the deep bush to heal, basically reverting to their natural diet of zebras and wildebeests.
The environment healed, but the animals did not simply revert to a blank slate.
No, the trauma of those years permanently altered the survivors. Rangers observed that the baboons maintained a hypervigilant distance whenever a lion roared, far beyond their normal caution.
And the lions, despite regaining their weight and strength, gave the primates a wide berth. They actively avoided crossing paths.
It serves as a profound demonstration of behavioral fluidity. We like to think of animal behavior as rigidly programmed by genetics, lions hunt, baboons forage.
But when severe ecological pressure is applied, those biological scripts are completely rewritten.
Survival forces organisms to adapt their social structures, their hunting tactics, and even their neural responses.
It really is a dark reminder of how scarcity bends reality.
We talked earlier about how missing one night of sleep affects your brain, or how human societies unify under a threat. For you listening, think about how this applies to us.
It's a very human concept, really.
When you strip away the resources we rely on, whether that's food and water in the savannah or capital and security in a modern society, the polite routines vanish.
We are forced to abandon the luxury of our normal habits.
Right. We have to tap into a primal, often aggressive instinct just to navigate a difficult season. The Tsavo vendetta is a mirror showing us what happens when the safety net is completely removed.
It strips an organism down to its rawest mechanics. It forces brilliant tactical innovation, but at a devastating physiological cost.
Which leaves us with a lingering scientific mystery to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
Oh, this is the really fascinating part.
We know the animals that survived this conflict carried deep psychological scars for the rest of their lives. But modern biology is increasingly focused on epigenetics.
Right, the study of how behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work.
Exactly. We now understand that severe, sustained trauma can actually alter the way DNA is expressed through a process called methylation.
Which means the stress of starvation and constant warfare doesn't just affect the survivor.
No, those altered genetic expressions can be passed down to their offspring.
It's incredible to think about.
So consider the lions and baboons walking the Tsavo plains today. The sun is shining, the grass is green, and the rivers are full.
Everything looks normal.
But somewhere deep in their cellular biology, are they still carrying the genetic echo of the time their ancestors went to war?
The landscape forgets, but the biology remembers.
Picture that sun-baked earth one more time. The violence may have ended, but underneath the golden grass, the ghosts of the 92 are woven directly into the DNA of the savannah.